walking down the street in my hoodie as a young 20-year-old, wandered into a real estate agency, I won't name them, spoke to the lady and I said, what does it take to become a real estate agent? I'm really thinking about it, love to know.
Yes.
They laughed me out of the office.
Right.
Literally, because I was just a kid. In my
Everyone
hood,
knows that if you're 20 with a hoodie, you can't be an agent.
That's right. Welcome back to Wellington's #1 real estate podcast. We're back at it again with Adam Coburn, my great friend, colleague and business partner, and we're here to talk real estate. Today, we're going to have a discussion, Adam, about how much money real estate agents really earn, what it's like to be a real estate agent, benefits and downfalls.
Yeah,
what do you think about that?
Right, interesting chat. I mean, I don't know. What's the typical view out there? Greedy real estate agents earning a stack of money and
slide in a couple of weeks work.
That's right. And a good friend and old business partner of mine, Brent, he often used to say, mate, all we do is drive around collecting bags of money. Don't tell anyone, otherwise everyone will want to do it.
Yeah.
Right? But nothing could be further from the truth. And interestingly, I mean, I'm a bit of a data guy, as you know, and I like the facts. And I no longer knew what the facts were in terms of the real estate agents across New Zealand here, right? So I actually used ChatGPT just like an hour ago to work out, well, how many real estate agents are there in New Zealand and how much do they actually earn on average? And this is literally what ChatGPT said. So I said, so it said, as of 2024, there are approximately 16,000 licensed real estate agents in New Zealand. This number has been relatively stable, reflecting the steady demand and supply dynamics of the real estate sector. So firstly, 16,000. That's a lot of agents. Very, very, very competitive sector, right? The average income for real estate agents in New Zealand varies significantly depending on experience, location, and market conditions. After accounting for business expenses, the average income for real estate agents is around $41,697 per year. However, this figure can fluctuate wildly, da-da-da-da-da. So, I don't know. To start with, 16,000 agents in the country, very, very competitive, and an average income of under $42,000 doesn't sound like a lot of money. So, is that surprising to you?
Well, what's surprising is that it hasn't changed. I remember it was around 40,000 average in mid-2000s, right? And of course, $40,000 was worth a lot more money then.
Yes.
So that's interesting to me. I thought it might have been a little bit higher today, maybe 60 or...
I mean, this might be wrong, but
So that's my first reaction to that information. But the other thing is, and you kind of pointed it out, right? And it was implicit in what you said, is it's highly competitive. The barriers to entry are low to be a real estate agent. So people, to get a license now, it's harder than it was. It used to be costing $300 when I got into it.
There might be low barriers to entry, but there are some now.
Yes, there are some. Yeah, it's 3-month course and 6 months supervision, right?
Yep.
So that
and annual fees and ongoing training requirements and all that sort of thing. Right?
It's a tougher game, right?
And that's a fantastic change that's taken place in the last 10 years to professionalise, if you like, the industry.
It's been a great change.
Yeah.
So that's good. So if the barriers to entry are relatively low, and if people see it as being an industry where you can make a lot of money, you get a lot of people doing it, right?
Yes.
And so I think fundamentally that is why it's a tough game, because it's so competitive.
That's right. Yeah.
And so I think people have to have coming into the industry need to have realistic expectations about that. But equally, the flip side is to think sometimes ignorance is a little bit of is important, because you don't know who's going to be good necessarily, and you don't know whether you're going to be good at it, and you've got to give these things a go, and you've got to try it, right?
Yeah.
And if you find that you love it, if you absolutely love it, there are rewards to be had.
For sure.
And those, but let's break down. You mentioned some of the myths. Obviously, people think that we're all running around, we slide in for 2 weeks, take a $30,000 commission at the end of it, and it's really easy. And why don't I just put a sign up and do it myself?
The house will sell itself.
House will sell itself, right?
Yep.
So a couple of interesting points. More properties are sold using a real estate agent today than were 30 years ago, right? And
the proportion,
right, using an agent, and that's actually a nation like that's the same in America, same in New Zealand. Sort of the Western world, right? And that's
so despite attempts to disrupt the industry, despite these massive developments, massive developments in technology, and 30 years ago we didn't have the real estate portals, the realestate.co.nz, the trademe.co, and so on. And despite that, when there's seems apparent greater ability for someone to sell their own house using those tools and so on, a higher proportion of houses are sold now using a real estate agent than 30 years ago.
Yeah, so I think it's it's halved, right? So it's gone from around about 10% of transactions to about 5 or thereabouts, or maybe slightly less than that are actually traded without a real estate agent, right? Now, it's amazing statistic, right? So it shows you, A, how important real estate agents are as kind of lubrication for the market, so to speak. We help the market turn by being involved in the transaction between two humans, which we've talked about in a prior podcast. So I think that's an important starting point to say, hey, real estate agents are useful, they do a good job, and they're important, and more of them are being used. But then if we actually look at the nature of the work, right, we say, okay, so put a sign up, you do a couple of open homes on weekends, and then you get an offer and you negotiate that offer and you sell the house. On the surface, that looks easy. What would you say to that? Because you and I know actually behind the scenes, the level of work and effort and the different types of hats that you have to wear, which is quite a fascinating part of it, are much more extreme than it looks on the surface.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, look, Craig, to be honest with you, I find it a difficult question to answer because I know how crazy busy we are and how crazy busy our colleagues are, but I've never actually written it down on a bit of paper to sort of analyze it properly.
Yeah.
Okay, so it seems so simple, you're right, but there's just so many different aspects to fundamentally the process of persuading someone to entrust me with the sale of what is normally their largest asset.
Yep.
All right, and the fact that it's kind of ethereal, it's not like being a brain surgeon. You can say, well, it's a very, very difficult job being a brain surgeon and conducting this bit of brain surgery, and that's why you don't do it yourself, right? With a real estate agent, well, it isn't brain surgery, let's be honest.
Which is lucky, otherwise
we
might have struggled.
I mean, but still, the implications of underselling your property, the implications of making a mistake or taking shortcuts can be very expensive. We're talking tens or potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. But the actual act of doing it, it's not rocket science. It's not brain surgery. But there are like hundreds of moving parts, and you and I both know that every situation is slightly different. They're all nuanced. It's different people, different situations, and at the end of the day, you're not actually just dealing with houses. What you're fundamentally dealing with is people's problems, people's aspirations, and moving people through that process or that stage of their life.
True.
Houses are the physical assets or the nuts and bolts of it, aren't they? But
so from a high level, that's absolutely correct. I mean, this is it's really an EQ rather than IQ game to some degree, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we have to have a huge, deep understanding of human nature, what drives people, how to market to them, how to persuade, how to influence, and how to do all that, and using our fiduciary responsibility to our vendor client, and our responsibility to buyers as well, to be fair on everybody and to get the best price for our client, right? And balancing those responsibilities, is really kind of an EQ game. But what I would
and the stresses are high on both sides.
Yeah, fundamentally. Now that's kind of a high level view of kind of, I suppose, the job itself. But if you break it down to the nuts and bolts, you've also got to be, when you first view the property, you have to advise on how to maximize the assets. So you become sort of an asset manager. You got to say, hey, you need to repaint the interior, you need to do the gardens, and then we often get, as you will know, we often get involved in that. So we often have, provide a lot of support. So we've got to, we have to have a huge amount of suppliers that we work with. We have to have help and support with people that can help organize those trades for people at no cost to the client.
No financial benefit to us.
No financial benefit to us. Yep. And we go through that process of maximizing their assets value by advising them on that, and then helping support them in project managing that. And that's before we even get to the market, right?
Yeah. But a key part of that advice too is not every buyer is different, and so different buyers have different expectations in terms of the property they buy, right? So the nature of the property. One of the fundamental things I think we do right at the start of the process, like you talked about, is matching that property with the right sort of target market buyer. And so obviously there are different segments in the market, and they look for different things. And so the work you do to the property can really alter enormously depending on where you see the property sitting in terms of the target market.
Yeah, well, I'll give you a quick example of that. We had an investment property was being sold recently, and advice given to the client was to give the tenants notice and stage it because tenants weren't presenting well. Property needed a little bit of paint, and and so we suggested that. Client decided not to do it. It went to the market, and 0 offers. So they took the advice, took it off the market, got the tenants out, repainted the interior, staged it, and there was 4 offers and a price that was about $50,000 higher than anybody was expecting on day one.
Same property.
So, yeah, same property. So there's a great example of where that the added value of that advice, because we got the chance to do an A/B test, right?
Yeah, true.
And how much difference that advice, how much value that can really add. Now,
just interestingly on that one, it was an investment property, and who bought it?
I was a first-time buyer.
First-time buyer,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So that's a big difference in terms of the strategy that you would employ.
Exactly.
Whether it's
take the tenant paying the cash flow out, right, and present it more as a home, and then of course the first-time buyers who are more active than the investors was the eventual buyer for it. So that's a great point. So that's where that advice, and it's not just the value. I mean, that's the value that someone gets from that advice. But the advice itself, you have to understand that. You have to have a deep understanding of all of those things that you just mentioned. You've got to be able to provide that advice. Then you've got to execute on it. You've got to have a team of people that can help you execute on it. And that's before we even talk about disclosures, compliance. So, if we go into that briefly, once obviously we get to the stage of listing the property, then we need to talk to the owner about, this is part of the real estate authorities, compliance on real estate agents, is there's a lot more transparency, which is a wonderful thing.
Yes, true.
Between the seller, the agent, and the eventual buyer, right?
Yep.
And so we obviously have to do an interview process with that vendor, and we have to extract from them anything they know about the property that may be of material difference or material interest
to the buyer, to making the decision, do I want to purchase this property, do I want to own this property, and how much should I pay?
And now we get into a lot of complexity, right? And houses seem simple on the surface. So people, of course, the nature is it's easy because it's just houses. It's just a house, right? What could be wrong with it?
Yeah.
And
they become quite technical.
They can become very technical. And knowing on the edge of whether something is required to be disclosed, that can be quite grey as well. You can have something, is it maintenance or is it something that's going to change the value?
It gets subjective.
It gets very subjective.
Different people have got different opinions as to what's material and what's not.
Yeah. So we go through this disclosure process, right? We might find out, okay, so, there's a section of the roof that might be poor, right? Like average condition. So we might decide, okay, that might be a grey area, right? So, well, it's probably got 5 years left in that corner of the roof. The other side of it's been replaced.
Not currently leaking.
You and I undoubtedly would err on the side of, advising the client to disclose it. But it's a grey one, right? Because it's got 5 years left. The other half of the roof was replaced. Most people would say, well, hang on, that's just perhaps there's a maintenance issue. So these are areas where it takes quite a bit of skill and experience to understand.
Yep. And that just comes about when you've dealt with a lot of buyers and you start to get a sense of, well, what is considered material by most people.
Correct. That's great. That's a great way of looking at it. And so now we go past the disclosures. You've got all the paperwork to do. You get the paperwork done with the client. And of course, we didn't even talk about, or you did briefly talk about the fact that you had to persuade them in the first place. You had to find them in the first place. So if we actually rewind now on the process and say,
where are all these sellers?
Yes,
how do I find a seller? Are you a seller?
So a salesperson wakes up every day unemployed, right?
Yes, true.
So in New Zealand, for anyone that's listening doesn't know this, real estate agents are contractors, not employees. So on average, of course, there might be some exceptions depending on how agencies set up their structures, but typically, salespeople don't earn any salary.
No.
There's
it's commission only, 100% commission only.
And a huge lag before you get paid when you start, right? So when you first come on board, you might have, you've got to find a listing, or hopefully, the agency is supporting you with some stuff. Then you've got to get it sold, and then you've got to get paid, which doesn't happen until, 10 working days after going unconditional typically. And then there might be you have to wait until the company's pay packet time is.
Can be months. Well, in fact, it's invariably it's months. But if you go right back to the start of the process of how do I find someone who wants to sell their house, and then how do I persuade this person that I'm the right one for the job?
When you've just started, right, as well.
Yes, when you've just started, and you can't, and it's difficult to articulate exactly. What value does a real estate agent bring? Because it's not like being a rocket scientist. It's not like being a brain surgeon. And so it can be difficult.
Yeah, the value is there, and the market is being efficient in using real estate agents to sell their house. It's just that the value is less tangible to people because you can't, and especially because the value of a house is unknown in advance, right? No one can know, and so saying, great, I'm going to get you a better price for your house than somebody else is wonderful. But
prove it.
How do you prove it, right? And so an agent has to learn how to get good at doing that.
Yes. So it's all about confidence and trust.
Yeah. And then of course the sort of prospecting side of things, right? So as you pointed out, you don't have like a flood of sellers knocking down your door to put the house on the market on day one.
No.
So you got to find them, right? So this means networking. It means getting out there and you've got to perhaps you've got to start marketing it yourself, social media. You've really got to become a business person thinking about your personal income as a business, not as an employee, and you've got to do that immediately, right?
100%.
And so now you've got to, and you've got to go out there and market yourself to find people that would use you to sell. Then you've got to persuade them. Then you've got to get the house listed. Then you've got to get.
Yeah. So given that's very, very difficult for someone who's just coming into the industry, right, or just decide I'm going to be a real estate agent, and they don't have listings, knocking their door down. For a new entrant like that, how do you go? What's the best way to enter? I mean, given it's so difficult to do it on your own, then what are the hacks, if you like?
Well, building a database from day one, right? Starting with your sphere of influence, the people that you know, the people that trust you. The people that know. I mean, we've got a wonderful person working in our agency now who's had 30 years of experience in media sales, right?
Yes.
Credible network, and she's just done a fantastic job of actually building her profile quickly and building it through her own network sphere of influence and people who already know she's a great salesperson who would trust her with selling her house, right? So that's one thing that can help. But I think it just highlights, some of the difficulties, and of course, then you've got to manage expenses too, right? You've got to manage. It's not just that you've got to think about like a business; it is a business.
Yes, totally is.
You've got income, you've got expenses,
money out.
You've got to think about
overheads.
You've got to think about overheads. A lot of the things that we do on a day-to-day basis cost a lot of money to run, and of course when you start, typically you're going to be one person doing all of the different parts of running a business. So you're your own marketer, you're your own accountant, or accounts person. You're your own runner, running around doing, putting lock boxes on and doing all the stuff that you've got to do. Then you've got to be the influencer and the persuader, and then you've got to be the salesperson selling the house. So and that's just probably not even then you've got to do the compliance. You've got to be a lawyer as well.
Yes. So what do you think about? I mean, my view is that if you're just starting out and you really want to elevate your income quickly to at least a base level where you've got enough to cover your costs and supply you with an income that's sufficient to live off for perhaps you or you and your partner or you and your family if you have one, you can go out there and do it on your own. Or, in my opinion, the smart move is you go and join a successful team. By successful team, I don't just mean a successful brand. That's obvious, because with the brand comes the reputation in the marketplace and also the training and the systems and leveraging off the skills and experience of as large a team as possible of really experienced quality agents that are there already. But also within that business, joining a team of people who have got a large amount of deal flow coming across their desk all the time. Yeah. So you're straight in the deal flow.
It's a wonderful, obviously you need that opportunity, but I think that's a wonderful way to do it. It's a fantastic exposure to the game with very limited risk.
Well, you hit the ground running, don't you? As soon as you join,
you're doing everything.
That team has got 6 listings.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You're obviously not earning all the money across all of it, but you are rapidly accelerating your training and your experience, and also fundamentally, you're being seen by the market in front of these properties. Yeah. Now,
just as a point, because we've talked about this in terms of the workflow, the complexities, and how intense it is, and also how the average income is very low. So this is going to make this sound quite unattractive at this point, right? So and
what are we doing here?
Yeah. So it's worth pointing out that there are huge rewards for good agents who are. Excuse me.
Allow me to take over. There's huge rewards for agents who are good, right? So, what are the positives of being a real estate agent? Why would someone be attracted to this, and why would someone consider it?
Well, once you've built a huge, successful real estate business where you are getting deal flow coming to you, right? Because you've got a personal brand, you've probably reputation, built a team. You are running a small business, and there are financial rewards to be had for that, and you get those financial rewards when you like everything in life, when you deserve them. When you are adding value for many clients and you're giving them better prices, you're being fair on buyers, you're giving them a good experience, and then they're coming back to you to sell their house, and you're helping lubricate the market in a way that's very efficient and is great for your clients, you're providing good service, you can make a lot of money in this game. It really is possible. And there are, the part of the reason why it's competitive and people get into it is that, of course, they know that, some of the very successful agents can make, even 7-figure, numbers. But it's important to point out too that when numbers are bandied around in the real estate game, they're often gross numbers, aren't they? So,
yes, that's true.
So when people talk about, they
gross,
say there's a $1 million earner, which of course, sounds absolutely amazing, and wouldn't it be incredible to earn $1 million? It's never really $1 million.
No, it's actually typically what that means is $1 million in fees paid to the company for selling the property. Then the company takes a slice of that. They've got expenses to cover, and then the balance is paid out to the agents, and the agent has overheads,
expenses to run their business, and to
get
up to $1 million, you've scaled a bit.
You've got a team.
You've typically got people to pay.
That's
you've
right.
got prospecting activities, marketing activities you're doing that are on autopilot, and of course they can come to hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes.
Totally.
Yeah.
100%.
So you might net, out of $1 million writer would you say net 600, 700,
or 500?
No, or 500. No, it probably is probably more like 500. Yeah, I mean that's right.
Depending on if are they reinvesting a bunch of that income and promoting themselves, or lots of marketing spend, all that sort of thing. It depends.
It does make a difference what agency they're with too, because agencies have different splits, right?
That's right.
And obviously we have very, very fair splits that are very good for our agency at Lowe & Co. And of course what that does allow agents at Lowe & Co. to do is scale. I think you can see, and you can see it actually in the differences in our business relative to some of the other businesses out there, is that our agents are able to build teams because they do have a bigger margin on average than what's going on there typically in the industry.
Well, and also critically because at Lowe & Co. a large amount of the administrative workload is taken away from the agent.
Yeah, that's right.
It allows them
that's
to
right.
focus much more
that's
on
right.
promoting themselves, promoting the real estate that they're selling, and engaging more in more conversations with buyers, more conversations with sellers, which is really what the agent's there for.
Exactly, but there are different models, aren't they? And it's not knocking any of the other models because they work great, but some models really are about the agency, where the agency is taking a much bigger margin and the agency puts themselves front and center, and you don't see those teams bubbling up amongst them. It's more of a, they're more individual or might have a little partnership here and there, but they don't have super teams in them. Yeah. And it's partly because you just can't afford it, in those businesses. So
that's right. There's always a risk to hire a new person or to invest in a new system to expand your capacity and so on.
Yeah, and when you don't have the margin, as much margin there to take that risk, you're not going to, right? And even if you do, it's still not going to pay off as much. Yeah. So on that, I think if you actually look at the amount of listings per agent too, it's one of the reasons why it's very high at Lowe & Co. Because they do have that support to be able to build that team. Yeah. And so going back to the actual amount of income that people are earning, do you have a sort of a sense in your mind of what percentage of people would get to that kind of, in the industry? How many people are going to get there?
Oh gosh, I know that again, I don't have the data on this, but the ratio of people who start their real estate license, complete their real estate license, and then go out into the industry. Firstly, a lot of people do their license and then just don't even enter the industry. And then of the people who do enter the industry, a large amount of them don't succeed, and they just can't make the numbers work. So, what was your question?
What percentage? Do you think there's an 80-20 rule here or a 90-10 rule? Obviously it would be worth doing the analysis to really.
The universe seems to work on an 80-20 rule, doesn't it? I wouldn't be surprised if it was more like 90-10. Yeah. To be honest with you.
Me too. Maybe even less in terms of getting those big numbers.
That's right. The big numbers. But and so, what is it that makes an agent successful? What determines who gets to that top 10% and earns those many hundreds of thousands of dollars once all the expenses are taken out? Do you have a view on that?
It's a great question. So I do. I think there's a saying that we have at Lowe & Co, which is there's an agent out there for every seller. Right, in the sense that we've seen people with very different personalities come into this game.
100%,
and a whole gamut. From young people to old people to people who are gregarious to people who are quieter, and they can all succeed, which is fascinating. Right? It's not just a charisma game. Sometimes that stuff can be really helpful. Right?
There's not a personality trait that makes a successful agent.
Not one. Right, no. And so I think. I would say one of the most important things is resilience. Mm-hmm.
You get a lot of rejection.
I'll tell you, a story about myself personally when I got into real estate. This is 24 years ago, and I was, 20 years old, and I was walking down. I wanted to find out what it took to become a real estate agency. Yeah. Walking down the street in my hoodie as a young 20-year-old, wandered into a real estate agency. I won't name them, but the front desk people, the people at the front desk, I came out of the front desk and spoke to the lady, and I said, "What does it take to become a real estate agent? I'm really thinking about it. Love to know."
Yes.
They laughed me out of the office.
Right.
Literally, because I was just a kid.
Everyone knows that if you're 20 with a hoodie, you can't be an agent.
That's right. and what happened next, of course, is I wandered down the street. It was like water for duck's back. I don't care. Got laughed out of the office. There's another one down the street. I'll go ask them.
Yeah.
Now, I went and asked them, and I had the great fortune of running into a guy called James Quinn. Love James to bits. Wouldn't be here today in real estate. It wasn't for him. He's like Father Christmas, big white.
Cheers to James.
White beard, big belly, great guy, big laugh, and he just said, "Come in, I'll tell you all about it." And it was the luckiest day of my life.
Wow.
But the point I'm making here is about the resilience, right?
Yeah.
That was actually a good sign for my real estate skills.
Yes, true.
That I walked, that I didn't have the fear of rejection to go in the first place.
You had the courage to ask the question twice.
And when I got rejected, I wandered down the street and did it again. Yeah. So that resilience, I think, is really important. I think, often people will fail no matter what their personality is, if they don't have the resilience to be able to take a no, because this is a game of no's, isn't it?
Yes, for sure. There's a lot more no's than there are yeses.
Exactly. And so you need to be able to, I suppose another way of putting it is you need to be able to get high off the highs and not too low off the lows. And that to me, I think, is probably more important than anything else.
Yeah. Very good. I would agree totally. And the other thing I suggest that people that you need to be is you need to have a fire in your belly.
Yeah.
You need to want it badly. Yeah. And it's related to the rejection, right? Because the average person, and of course all we can talk about is averages, right? Here, but your average person can only tolerate so much rejection. But if you have a big fire in your belly, you can tolerate way more.
Yeah. But the fire's to do the deals right. So it tends to be someone who loves doing deals, who loves the chase, sort of a hunting kind of a, if you enjoy, it's not the only, it's not the only, that extrinsic drive is not the only thing that can motivate you as an agent, but it is a very good one if you have that kind of, you enjoy putting people together, getting things coming to a conclusion and chase that.
And you want to be your own boss.
Yeah.
You're a self-starter, you want to be your own boss, you want to have the independence and the flexibility of making your own decisions.
Yeah.
Right?
Flexibility in real estate is an interesting one, right? Because everyone thinks they get into it for the flexibility, and then actually, if you're successful, you find you've got no flexibility.
You're so flexible that the business might be flexible, and you are running around like a blue-ass fly in service of the business. Yes,
exactly.
True.
And 6 days a week, you've got to be prepared to do. It's a lifestyle, not a job, is something I often say, because. Your family have to be happy with you taking calls at all hours. Phone's always on. You never, you don't really have a job. It's not a 9 to 5. You're just doing it. You're just doing it. Yeah, you're just doing it.
You always have to be on. I think it's a bit of a myth that you have to be available 24/7. You don't. You can carve out those, and you do the same. You can carve out those times.
But I didn't, and I think that comes later. It tends to come later when you. Obviously, people can structure it however they structure it. If they're clever enough to do it early, they could be. But I think to get into it and to start off with that passion, with that fire, you tend to not, right? For quite a long time.
That is true. Before you have a family, before you're married, before you have children, before you have these other responsibilities that are demanding of your time, you can give it everything. But that's no different from any other career. If you really want to go places in any career, at the start of the process, you are investing a lot of yourself, a lot of the time to really get things moving.
And so, in terms of what are the cool things that people don't know about with real estate, right? Like I think about this a lot. For example, the gratification. It is an incredible experience. It's a privilege, an absolute privilege, to come into people's lives and deal with the largest asset typically that they have. And people, we get to deal with people with terminal cancer.
Yes.
People who are divorcing. Yeah.
Death in the family. And the other end of the spectrum, complete joy, newlyweds, new children.
Upsizing to a new home because they've just had another baby. And
we're there at the kitchen bench with those people, and they're sharing with us, often someone who's a relative stranger, and they're welcoming us into their inner circle, if you like, and sharing what's happening in their lives. And that is an honour.
It's an honour
to be in those conversations with those people and being entrusted to help them move through whatever that phase of life is.
And some of these things might sound negative, like many people I've dealt with that have had terminal cancer. I mean, I got one right now that I'm dealing with who's got terminal cancer, who, he's been a bit of a mentor to me. He's been 40 years in an adjacent industry to real estate, and it is just getting a great result, which we have done for several of his investment properties right now, while he's sorting out his affairs with terminal cancer. It's been one of them. It's so gratifying, to get a great result, and you just get the privilege of being, close to these people. You get to meet incredible people, like this.
Well, just the privilege of being entrusted with that level of importance, if you like, isn't it?
And I think this is something people don't get to see, on the surface.
It's easy to sort of think that, well, what's real estate? What's being a real estate agent about? Well, it's about selling houses. It's really not about houses. It's about people. It's about their problems. It's about their issues. It's about their aspirations, and it's about helping them achieve these goals. What we're dealing with is houses. What we're transacting in is houses. But what we're really in the business of is in the business of working with people to achieve their goals, help them through difficult patches in their lives, and do it with with as much or as little stress as possible.
And compassion and empathy.
Exactly.
So I think that's something that's really important, and of course is quite counter to that sort of view that real estate's all about money too. It's a financial transaction, but it's not. It's not just about money.
It's really all about the relationships you got with those people, isn't it?
Yeah. So look, Adam, that's a really fascinating chat, and can't wait to do it again. That's the LoweDown. Hope you enjoyed it. We're going to do it again. Going to have lots more fascinating chats with Adam and other people. So please subscribe, and can't wait to the next one.
See you next time.